The following episode contains graphic language and content which some listeners may find disturbing. It is intended for a mature audience only. Listener discretion is advised. Today's episode features an extraordinary guest. Mohawk Matt discusses his transition from graffiti art to street gangs and that finally led him to prison. In addition to detailing his painful addiction to drugs and the impact it made on him, he also describes some of the grueling things he witnessed in prison. Rock bottom hit him hard, but it allowed Matt to reflect deeply and commit to turn his life around to the success story that he shares with us today. Matt, welcome to Multispective. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Okay, I'm actually curious. I wanted to know a little bit about your name, Mohawk Matt. Is that something that you created yourself or?
No, one of my friends gave me that name. When I moved out to a different city after I'd gotten out of prison and I kind of was going through some stuff, my friend gave me this nickname because I was always into punk rock and I had a mohawk coming home from prison and I started to go bald a little bit. So I ended up tattooing a mohawk on my head that's in letters that say Mohawk in the actual way of a mohawk.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. Oh, listeners, too bad you're not able to see this, but I'll see if we can get a picture of this at some point.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the gothic punk rock scene in the 80s and 90s, so it does. If you knew me back then, you'd definitely think it fits me.
Interesting. Did you ever like color and dye your mohawk like these?
Oh my God, I used cherry red. I used blue black. I loved doing the and I always kept it about that big. It was never really like one of those big ones, but I kept it just big enough.
Wow, that's so cool. I feel like that's like a style that's just so far away from like the Asian culture. Like over here, there's still a certain like box that people sort of have to sort of fit within to enter the professional world or to present themselves a certain way. There's still so much stigma around certain things. So it's really cool. Like I remember when I traveled to Europe, seeing all these different really like interesting styles in fashion. Like, you know, it's okay to be a woman and be bald and it's beautiful. Like it can be such an interesting and beautiful sort of like expression of an individual as well. But you just don't see that around here so much. So it's really cool to have that.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your childhood. I mean, you said you came from this like punk rock childhood.
Well, no, I mean, I myself was a punk into the gothic punk rock, new wave 80s music scene, but like I came from a pretty normal middle class white family in the suburbs of Los Angeles called the San Fernando Valley.
Okay, interesting. And you were really into graffiti. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh my God, graffiti was so big for me. It was amazing. Like it was just like the best expression, the best way to make a name for yourself and like put who you were, a stamp on it on the streets and collectively to hang out with other guys that were just like me. It was probably the best time of my life. I still smell spray paint when I close my eyes sometimes.
Really? It's like a brotherhood, right? Like you have this common interest.
I mean, you could call it that, but it was very competitive because everybody was competing against each other to write better, to get your name out better, to find new ways to climb on things and get higher and higher and higher on buildings and billboards and freeway overpasses. And it became dangerous as the years went on.
Wow, interesting. Do you reckon like if you had gotten into graffiti at this day and age, social media would have been really different for you? Like that would have influenced you?
Well, here's the thing. I actually have been more in touch with it now, and I've kind of gotten back into it. Now things have settled on the streets in California and LA. I'm not saying it's legal. I'm not saying it's okay. But what I am saying is the cops aren't really actively chasing you as much as they were. It's like one of those things where it's not that important for them to bother you about anymore. The gang members aren't trying to kill you for graffitiing. Storefront owners are more inclined to ask you to help paint their building. So it's like in today's age, it's kind of looked at as more cool and less people are bothered by it. And in my day, we were being chased by cops. We were being shot at by business owners and local heroes that want to help the public. We were being attacked by other tagging crews and gang members. It was way different. It's actually really easy to be a graffiti artist today. They actually make the supplies for you. And when in my day, we had to steal everything and then make supplies by putting stuff together, making bigger holes to spray bigger. and we were limited to certain groups of like 2 or 3 items. Nowadays, it's become so trendy because of social media that anybody can do artwork and be a tagger.
Interesting, really interesting. Do you reckon though, like also the type of art has changed as well? Like back then, was it more a deeper, darker, maybe things that were politically,
In my day, it was simply just about our name was who we were and the crew. We had a crew that we were from, and that was our collective group of guys. And it was really fashionable to be from 2 or 3 crews. You could be from 2 or 3 groups at the same time, like I was and like I still am. I represent a couple different crews in Los Angeles. So
interesting.
Nowadays, it's a little different. It's more about art. They include political stuff in their artwork, their views and their opinions on everything from the gay movement to abortion to politics. Everything is included in some of these guys' artwork. So I feel, again, it's gotten away from graffiti. It's more personalized artwork just out on the streets.
Right. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. Yeah, it's almost like pushing some kind of like agenda as opposed to before.
Yeah, they're pushing agenda. In my day, we had no opinion on politics. We didn't care. It was about my name. You needed to know my name. I didn't care what the politician was doing. I didn't care about the abortion clinic, what they're I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was more concerned with you knowing my name.
Right. Interesting. So you did this in your younger years for how long? At what age did you
I went all the way up until I was like 21, 22. I mean, I eventually, our tagging crew was emerged and meshed into a street gang because of some choices. A couple of my friends had killed somebody. And in the 1990s in Los Angeles, all the important, real tough, important guys that were the shot callers for the whole California system sent word out to the street that all these tagging crews either join gangs or they're going to start getting shot and taken out. So my tagging crew joined a gang. I became an active gang member. But a lot of us who were real graffiti artists at heart, we continued to graffiti on the side. We just didn't tell nobody. We continued, like me. I kept that going as long as I could until I got a drug habit and that took over.
Right. So why is it though that they aim or target graffiti crews?
Okay, so my personal opinion, and that's all that is, knowing the prison system, knowing gangs, is the recruitment numbers for these big, humongous Los Angeles gangs started to fall short because of the influx. More kids were being taggers. The street gangs, their numbers for recruitment were lowering. So this was their way of pushing us by saying, number one, you're going to go to jail eventually when you commit crimes. They run the jails no matter what. So they were basically saying, you guys join our gangs. They didn't care which gangs we joined. Join our gangs or become your own gang and start getting involved with politics, or when you come to jail, you're going to be in some trouble and we're going to get you in jail. So all these kids that weren't into that lifestyle got scared, and we either A, became a gang if your tagging crew was big and strong enough, or B, you had to join a local gang that was close to your tagging crew. My group of guys chose B. We joined a local gang.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, again, I feel like this is something like just movies have always portrayed, but is there like an initiation process to join or anything?
Yeah, see, that's something I just spoke out about. I did another podcast called Barrio Driven. Those initiation things usually are lies. I don't know how the Asian gangs are because I've heard Asian gangs are extremely dangerous. I can speak for the Hispanic and the white groups and most of the black groups. We don't randomly kill people. If a random person is killed, it's usually an accident, and we feel just as bad as like they do. Like, we don't target innocent people. We're not going to sacrifice one of our members that's going to go to jail. If you're going to kill someone, we'd rather it be someone that we don't get along with. We don't just pick a lady sitting at the bench like they always try and say, oh, Susie's sitting on the bench going home from work. I need you to kill her to prove us you're down. That doesn't happen.
Okay.
That's a myth. That's a myth that they want society to believe, because in all honesty, yes, gangs are bad, but there's a lot of good that we did together as a group of guys. It's a lot of brotherhood, and there's a lot of like most of us, we're actually fighting people that are playing in the same game as us. Imagine a group of people playing Monopoly from different cities, all playing Monopoly together. We're not out there attacking innocent civilians. It happens once in a while, yes. But for the most part, we're fighting a war amongst other people fighting the same war. So we're not really out there getting innocent standby people.
Right. So can you tell us about some of the good things that you did for society?
Oh, well, I mean, we didn't really do much good for society inside a gang. I mean, we as a group, I mean, I would say we were in our local neighborhood in the city of Sun Valley. We had a good group of friends. We took care of the families, the houses in our neighborhood. We took care of the local storefront owners. A lot of the stores in my gang's neighborhood, We wouldn't steal from them because they'd give us free drinks. You'd be surprised how many taco trucks and little liquor stores like having gang members hanging out in the front, because they'll give us free sodas and beer, because the more we're hanging out, the less chance they are of being robbed.
Right.
So it's like a rob Peter to pay Paul situation. We're helping you, you're helping us. They'll allow us to graffiti on the wall because that shows that someone is hanging out. Nobody's going to rob you. And we helped out the people in our community. Like, most of the people in our hood, we're not robbing people in our neighborhood. We're not attacking people in our neighborhood. So for the most part, I mean, yeah, there's some shootings and stuff that go on when we have rival beefs, but they're pretty decent to the city we live in, and the people living in the community with us.
Interesting. So most of like the fights or whatever that actually did go on were between gangs, not actually to the civilian.
Most of the fights, yeah, they're between other gang members or people that, you know. Back in the 90s, there was an influx of a lot of people wanting to be local heroes and make a name for themselves. And like a guy would drive by when we're graffitiing on a wall and want to tell us to stop and get out of the car. Well, he's probably going to get beat up. Stuff like that happens, yes. But we're not actively searching to attack innocent people. Now, if we go out and there's something we have to do and we're going to rob somebody, well, that's a different story. If there's a target and we have something to do, like then we'll do it. But for the most part, it's against people in our group.
Right. So you joined this gang. What were some of the typical day-to-day things that you were doing within the gang? What was
hanging
your role?
out. I mean, everybody did drugs. I didn't necessarily start doing drugs till I was 21, but like the biggest thing was hanging out, being present. You had to be present on the block, present in the neighborhood. You had to be seen. And if you weren't seen, you weren't cool. And like we spent nights making sure the hood, the park, and these liquor stores were all graffitied up so people knew this was our territory. We had a couple block area by the 5 freeway in the city of Sun Valley where we made sure that it was always graffitied up. So anybody passing through knew this was our area. You know, that was one of my jobs because I was really good with graffiti.
Interesting.
But like mostly it's just about being present. If a friend has a problem, we show up and help them deal with it. Somebody's car breaks down, we help. We make sure that there's a presence felt on this particular stretch of Laurel Canyon Boulevard in the San Fernando Valley because a lot of gangs have to pass through here. We had to make sure that if there was ever a beef, you needed to be one of the first kids to volunteer your hand, because if you got picked, there's probably consequences.
Right. Interesting. And how did you guys make money?
We sold drugs or we robbed other drug dealers. Again, if we're robbing you, it's probably another drug dealer or someone that was trying to be flashy. We weren't like, okay, I can only speak for my group of friends. I don't know what other gangs did. I know my group of friends. If you showed up and you were floshing and flashy and you weren't part of our group, you're getting robbed. If you were another drug dealer and it infringed on our areas of drug sales, you're getting robbed or possibly hurt. I was one of the kids that learned how to sell drugs and make money at a really young age. I got heavy into selling speed. Before there was crystal meth, there was what we called speed, crank. I used to sell that pretty heavy.
Really? So you got roped into the drug world yourself. Can you tell us how did that happen?
For me, it was accidental. It was like peer pressure one night. I was one of those kids that never smoked marijuana, never drank a beer. I was still playing sports on and off while I was from a gang. I played baseball. I had opportunities to play professional baseball. One bright night, after never trying even a beer or some marijuana or even a cigarette, mind you, one of my good friends, Chubbs, convinced me to try crack cocaine when crack cocaine was in the heyday of the early 90s. And my life changed drastically in that moment. That one moment, I can't even begin to describe to people how hard, how good, how scary, how disturbing and emotional that moment was smoking crack, because it's something that I can never forget. And every step after that, whether I was in prison or in gangs, became about drugs from the future on.
Really? So it was like a one-time, that's it, like you're done, you're hooked.
Crack is extremely addictive. It is extremely, it's not cocaine. It is cocaine based, but it's cooked into another form that you smoke it. And when you release the smoke out of your lungs, your whole life changes. Within a period of 1 year, my life went to shit. I lost my drug dealing. I sold everything I owned. I stole from everybody around me. I became a liability. My homeboys didn't like me around because they were worried all I wanted to do was smoke crack, and I would steal from them. I would steal from anyone, my family, you, your kids. Nothing was safe at that moment. That's how bad and how quick that addiction kicks in with those type of drugs. It's not a joke, and it's not something that is cool that like kids do thinking it's fun. It's not.
Man, that's so scary, especially like when you're young and you're still sort of like figuring yourself out and stuff. And then it's just so easy to get roped into that.
And to think that I did it off of peer pressure,
Right.
Like I made it
Exactly.
to the age of 21 and hadn't even tried a beer or some weed or a cigarette. And the first thing I got trucked into was crack cocaine. Within a matter of a year to 2 years, my life was ruined.
I'm just like trying to understand like what was that euphoric feeling that was so strong and so powerful.
Yeah. It's just what you said. It's a euphoric feeling. It's a head rush. It's a body high. It's your whole body just goes limp with ecstasy.
Mm.
But here's the thing though, as quick as it comes, the minute that smoke has been released from your mouth and your lungs, it's gone. And I spent years chasing that one moment, never, and I mean never, ever getting it back.
So did you like increase your dosage as you went? Because
Yeah, continued. I would smoke crack until I was sick to my stomach, throwing up. I would smoke crack till I was barefoot, walking around the Sepulveda Boulevard area. Like I said, I would trade my shoes. Drug dealers would take my shit and laugh at me just to watch me walk around barefoot, give them some old Nikes that they would take, not going to wear them. They would just take them to make fun of me. I would pee in my pants. I was so addicted and walk around the streets in my pants peed in. I traded a Rolex, a $7,000 Yachtmaster Rolex for a 20 piece of crack, and I was happy to get it.
wow.
That's how bad. I would call my mom, begging her, crying, collect call to pick me up. She'd pick me up. I would demand, make my own mother go buy me crack cocaine, sit in the car with me while I smoke it in front of my mother. And she would beg me just to drive home with her. And I would go home with her. And as soon as I got home, I'd find a way to try to steal her car and try to get my ass back down in the valley and smoke crack again. It was horrible. That drug owned me. It's the devil.
Yeah, that's so scary.
Yeah.
And for some people, like, you know, that get into it probably never really find themselves able to come out of it. It takes so much willpower.
It takes a lot. I mean, for myself, I was kind of coerced into trying. My friends had gotten tired of me smoking crack, and one of my friends had the bright idea. In fact, my friend who gave me the nickname Mohawk, Travis, rest in peace, he passed away. He convinced me to try crystal meth. I went one day, I injected crystal meth, and that was it. My whole life, that's a whole nother ballgame. I went from smoking crack to injecting with the needle, crystal meth, and sometimes heroin. Yeah.
Wow. So would you say that like that also helped or enabled you to be more violent?
Oh yeah. On cocaine and crack, I tell people there's two different types of paranoia. The cocaine paranoia, I'm scared of you. When I'm on methamphetamines, any type of speed, crystal meth, glass, any of that stuff, I'm paranoid violently. I'm getting ready for you. When I was on methamphetamine, everyone was a danger and everyone was at threat. I would rob you in front of your face. I would walk into Walmart and push those big screen TVs out and dare them to try and stop me. I was like aggressive on methamphetamine. It was a more dangerous drug, I believe. My journey went a whole nother route once I was on that.
And so this is what you would say landed you in prison for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, most of my charges, I had a couple gang-related charges when I was a kid. I went to juvenile halls, the system when I was a kid, and then I graduated to the county system. Yeah, the first time I ever went to the LA County Jail was possession of crack cocaine.
And I don't know what the laws are there, but like, is it completely illegal? So even a little,
It's a felony.
oh,
Yeah, it's a felony. Back then, you see, California's become so liberal now that they don't care if people use drugs. People get caught with ounces, kilos of drugs. They don't even arrest you. They don't even take them. It's our homeless problem with the drugs on the streets is disgustingly disturbing right now. And the cops stop. When in my day, if you got caught with marijuana or a tiny piece of crack the size of my pinky nail, you're going to county jail for at least a minimum of 1 year.
wow.
And that's what happened to me. I think I got 6 months in a county jail and I ended up getting released after 6 months into a drug program.
Really? Did that help?
I mean, no, because I wasn't ready. I went to the program just to make them happy to get out, to get back to doing drugs. You know what I mean? I wasn't ready. I was nowhere. My journey was just beginning back then.
Right. And, you know, I did an episode previously with someone who was struggling with drug addiction as well. And he said the same thing. He was like, you know, until I had decided that it was time to turn my life around, I was manipulating people left, right, and center. I was running away from rehabilitation.
Oh my God. I would manipulate everybody. Everybody was a victim when I'm on drugs. Everyone's a target. I look at everyone like you got something to give me, whether it be sex, money, possessions, something I could steal, a connection. No one was a human to me. You were all victims of something I can get from you.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
So then you get out and you get right back into it.
Yeah.
What was your second sentence?
Okay, so I did a total of 19 years. I did 3 different terms for that. My first term was like 3 years and around 8 months. I come home for 98 days. I was back in prison for another almost 4 years, 3 years and some change, maybe 8, 9 months, 6 months. I come home for 6 months. Then I catch the biggest case for me was I was sentenced to 9 years. I did a little short of 13 years straight. And that was kidnapping, home invasion, 2 counts of criminal threats, felony vandalism. And I think that's it.
Wow. Do you think you'd be able to like walk us through that situation? What was going through your mind during the kidnapping? Why did you?
I was selling drugs. I was out on parole on high control parole from the last prison sentence. This is my last big term. Had been selling drugs at one of my friends, and I decided I wanted to quit drugs. I gave my friend Johanna a bunch of drugs and some money and said, go to your friend's house. If you don't want to stop, I'm going to stop. I can't do this anymore. I was getting sick and tired. And I dropped her off and I told her, here's the one condition. Here's some drugs. Here's some money for food. I told her, don't call me. Leave me. I need 3 days. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to eat. I'm going to take a shower and I'm going to sleep for 3 days. I need to kick. I need to get off of all this shit. I need out of my system. I need to get better. And she agreed. Well, lo and behold, within 1 hour, she's calling me. Her and her friend had done all the drugs I gave them. They spent the money on more drugs. Within an hour or maybe an hour or two, because I had fallen asleep, I was right down the street from where they were. And I answered the phone. I said, I told you not to call me. And I said, don't call me. I'm going back to bed. She called me for 5 hours straight while I was asleep. I finally woke back up to pee or something. And I was like, what the fuck? Damn, I told you to stop calling me. And she's like, yeah, now they took, she was one of my good friends. And she told me, look, they took all my shit. Yes, I'm sorry. I did the drugs. I shared the drugs. Typical addict behavior. I spent the money you gave me on some food, but we bought more drugs. And then she took everything. And I said, God damn, I lost my cool. And I said, I'm coming down there. I had a brand new Cadillac, all hooked up. I jump in my car. I race down to this trailer park with an 8-pound sledgehammer. I walk up the back steps to this double wide trailer. I didn't pay attention that the guy across in his trailer had audio and video cameras recording everything, because I guess this one house was known for being a drug house and a lot of trouble. I walk up the back steps. I knock on the door with the sledgehammer. They come to the door. My friend comes to the door and she's like, Matt, I'm sorry. Don't be mad at me. And I grab her by the hair and I pulled her like 2 feet. Now in California, kidnapping is when you grab someone, move them. If you possess, hold someone and move them, that right there is kidnapping. Even if it's your friend, even if it doesn't matter. I grabbed her by the hair and pulled her about a couple steps, and she wasn't mad at me. She's like, okay, I'll go. And I said, get in the car. Let's go to my house. And she goes, okay. And I was so angry. I turned around and I went inside this house full of rage with an 8-pound sledgehammer. I broke the sinks, the toilets. I broke the fucking refrigerator. I broke the counters. Everything that was ceramic or that could break with a sledgehammer. Picture just some big ass tattooed monster white boy just destroying a trailer. Mind you, this girl and her friends just locked themselves in a bedroom, terrified because they know what's going on. And I'm telling them, you stole from my friend. You took the money. I gave you guys money. You stole her money. You stole her drugs. You took more from her. Someone in the room had a cell phone. The guy across the way with the cameras is screaming. And I was smart enough I heard what he said. I called the cops. And she goes, we got a cell phone in here. We called the cops too. I'm on parole. You can't miss me in my face. I'm on high control parole because I'm part of a prison gang. So they're watching me more than most. I come outside. The trailer was destroyed. I didn't ever realize until I sobered up and I saw the pictures how I destroyed a double wide trailer. I mean, I literally broke that thing down to the foundation with this sledgehammer. I lost my shit in there. I get outside. The guy across the way is looking at me and he's like, I called the police, and I looked at him and I pointed at him with the camera with the sledgehammer on camera. And I said, I'm going to fucking kill you if you don't shut your mouth. That right there in California is worse than actually touching him. If you threaten someone, it's way worse than actually if I were to beat him up. I dropped my friend off. As we took off, the cops were already on their way. I dropped my friend off and I took them on a high-speed chase up into the Antelope Valley. I lost the cops. I doubled back thinking I'm just going to go home. And halfway there, I saw the streets were lined with cops everywhere. They were looking for me actively. They were waiting for me because of my record. And I parked the car. I hid. And then I got back in the car and I said, fuck it. There's no way to beat this. I drove right back to where my friend was. As soon as I stepped out the car, the cops, helicopters, they were on me. Wow. And I went to jail. And I had to fight. I had to fight that case in the LA County Jail for about 18, 19 months, which was being in the county jails for that long is like you die a little every day. It's such a long, violent, dangerous place in our LA County Jail that it was just a horrible experience.
You say like jail is more
LA County Jail is pretty dangerous. Prison is bad depending on where you go with. The LA County Jail is always dangerous because there's always people there. There's always new groups of people, and everybody else that's in there is dangerous, waiting to go to prison.
Interesting. I'm curious, so like, why would the jail be more dangerous than the prison, though, itself?
Just because prison, picture thousands of inmates of all different races, groups, gangs, skinheads, Nazis, Crips, Bloods, Cholos. Everybody's there waiting, fighting cases. Everybody's angry. Tempers are high. People are not seeing their family. Not everybody has money to go to commissary. When you finally get to prison, you're more at peace because you're already sentenced. You've already had to accept it. You just want to get your cell, order your TV, get some food, and relax. And you get more program. In the LA County Jail, you don't get to go outside. You don't get any action outside unless you're on a rooftop. You don't get to see the sun. Your phone calls are watched. I mean, where I was, I didn't get many phone calls. In prison, you at least get a couple phone calls a week. You get better food. The food is cheaper. In the LA County Jail, they kill you in the food prices that you order. It's set up to destroy you. Prison is, you can live a little bit better in prison. Unfortunately, that's true.
Yeah, interesting. And usually people that are in the county jail would be in there for how long? Like, how long would you have to wait typically for sentencing?
You could do it. From when I left, they were doing stuff like you could be there anywhere from a month to 10 years. You can get sentenced and do your time. You could do your time in the county jail.
In the county jail, yeah, I was just thinking that. So like has there ever been a situation where they've actually been in holding longer than their actual sentence?
Yeah, that happens a lot. They mess up a lot, believe it or not. I've seen people get held 2 months past their release date accidentally. Papers get lost. Your name doesn't come up. Someone pretends to be someone else, gets released on accident. It's amazing. They have to constantly evaluate and update the system on wristbands, pictures, IDs, barcodes. There's always changing it because someone always finds a way to break the system.
Right. Interesting. So, okay, so you get into prison and you've basically transitioned from street to prison gang. Can you just tell us what the difference is between street gang and prison gang?
Okay, so street gang is a collective group of people that's in your neighborhood or a gang you're from. When you go to prison, all of these street gangs report to higher groups. There's groups for every race, every car. You get, depending on what you choose, you join a gang that fits your race or your gang. I stayed with my race in prison. I was from a street gang that's predominantly Mexican, but I was only asked one question when I went to the county jail. They asked me what race I was. I told them I'm white, and I ended up I stayed with that group all the way till the end.
Are you
Mind you, I still respect my street gang. I love my brothers from my gang. I always will. But in my eyes, a street gang is not the same as what race I am. I am not Mexican. I might be affiliated and hung out and grew up with them, but if you ask me a question like what race, okay, well, I'm white, and I'm not gonna deny my culture.
Right. But the question then is, like, your street gangs, you see members from your street gang in prison, and now you're in a different gang. So is there a possibility that you'd be against your own?
No, because mine when I went to prison, my street gang becomes less as important as my race. That was a separation that was made, and we were pretty friendly, and a lot of my friends that understood what I did, and they accepted what I did. Some of them didn't, and I stopped talking to them.
Right. So it's almost like, you have a little bit of like this understanding that like we were buddies on the outside, where on the inside we've got to respect our races and our separate.
Well, yeah, but we can still be buddies, but there are rules and regulations to how much you can and can't do with these other groups. Right. There's lines that are drawn, and you have to follow them.
Right. What would have happened if you didn't want to join any gang in the prison and just sort of?
Well, you very much have that option. You just things are a little bit harder for you when it comes to needing help or backup or anything like that.
Like protection and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. What's the view on terms of different crimes? Is there like certain stigma around different kind of crimes or being sentenced for different things?
Yeah. Anything sexual-related crime, you're in some serious trouble.
Interesting.
Serious trouble where you're not going to get protection from either the cops or us.
Right.
You are literally on your own. So,
was it in this prison term that you actually actively decided to turn your life around? In terms of at least with your drugs?
That was when I came home. That happened when I came home.
Yeah. Can you walk us through that?
Okay, so I came home from prison with a lot of PTSD. I served my country as well way before this in the U.S. Navy. I didn't have nowhere near. Now, mind you, I didn't see combat. I wasn't deployed during war. I served in the U.S. Navy as a fireman on the SS Constellation and before it was decommissioned, and that was pretty easy. Prison messed me up. There was so much shit that I saw that or went through or was involved with or my friends did that, prison is a very collectively small place and a lot of stuff happens. And the routine and stuff I saw were so ingrained in me that I came home doing my own laundry in the sink, wearing shower shoes around my house, in the shower of my own house. I had paroled to my mom's new home in Santa Clarita where she had moved. And I just was living in my room. Like I turned my room into a jail cell. I didn't like to go out much. Mind you, I had been doing drugs in on and off in jail. So I come home with a heroin habit now because methamphetamine is kind of frowned on in prison because the whites don't like it because it causes us to be erratic and not trustworthy. So I started doing heroin and I'm come home with a heroin habit. To get off of heroin, I had the bright idea to get myself back on crystal meth. So I was able to reach out with a cell phone and find some people I knew, and I get myself hooked back up on crystal meth. I won't leave the house. My drug habit starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. My behavior starts getting crazier. I violate parole a couple times. We get sent back to the county jail and or rehab for treatment because I can't stay sober. I cause a lot of trouble at my mother's house. I start destroying my mother's brand new 5-bedroom, almost $1 million home in Santa Clarita because I think I'm tweaking. I'm tweaking. I don't know if you've seen those videos of the people going crazy they're tweaking out, and I'm trying to upgrade her house wearing boxers and boots and a tool belt in the middle of the night with a headlamp on, and I'm tearing down the walls and pulling up the carpet thinking I'm Tim the Tool Man, Tweaker Taylor, and I'm trying to upgrade her house. Little do I know, I'm just destroying my mom's home.
No.
I'm destroying her property value. Her neighbors are complaining because there's saws going outside all times of the night. I'm destroying this house little by little. My drug habit is so bad that I'm only leaving in the middle of the night to go get more dope from drug dealers who are tired of me because I'm so violent. People would just give me drugs to get the fuck out of their house at this point.
Wow.
My behavior is so crazy on methamphetamine that people will literally be like, here, Matt, here's $20 of drugs. Just get the fuck out of here. Because $20 of meth would last me for a week because my brain was so fucked. I was like this close to having my mom 5150 me and have a pet team arrive with psychologists and sheriff's department and the fire department because I was borderline schizophrenic. I thought everything was about me. The TV shows, the radio, there was all a conspiracy about me. And I'll get you up to my last day where I'm sitting in a room that I've destroyed. Mind you, a really beautiful 5-bedroom home, almost $1 million in the suburb of Santa Clarita in Los Angeles County. I'm sitting in a room that I've broken down to a mattress, a bunch of filthy laundry. The drywall's off the wall. I've graffitied all in my room. It looks like a trap house fit for South Central California,
Wow.
Los Angeles. My room is destroyed. There's filth. I'm sweaty. I've been looking at porn and masturbating and doing all kinds of dumb shit for weeks because I'm just stuck in my head. And that's the methamphetamine does that. For me, it was always I focus on sex or I focus on violence.
Right.
There's no in between. I didn't get the whole I'm going to paint the house or paint cars in between. It was two routes for me. And I'm sitting in this room with porn on the TV. I'm sweaty. I'm filthy. I'm probably 90 pounds, if that. And I'm looking in the mirror and I just look like a freaking zombie. Hadn't slept in 2 weeks. I'm sitting in a sweat-stained mattress, and I had been praying to God. I believe in Jesus, and I also believe in Odin, the religion of my people. And I know that bothers some people, but I deal with that. That's my thing. I've been praying to both of them for 2 weeks. Please, I don't know how to make this stop. I'm way past stopping on my own at this point. I need help. I need an intervention. I need somebody to grab me and make it stop. And I'm praying with my eyes closed while I'm doing drugs throughout the day. Mind you, I don't even know how I keep getting drugs. At this point, it's so bad that drugs just magically keep popping up for me. And I feel like something spiritual is happening because I had been praying for 2 weeks. And then my last day, I did 17 shots of methamphetamine and heroin all over my body with needles. And I'm not missing the vein. I'm not missing the shots. I'm injecting into a vein. It's working. I did a shot in the vein of my penis. That was the last thing. And I remember it worked, but I remember I'm not getting high. I'm literally just injecting these drugs into all these veins and nothing's happening. There's no euphoria. There's no good feeling. There's no come down. All I'm doing is getting angrier and angrier, but tireder and tireder and exhausted and exhausted. And I'm not smart enough to realize that my prayers have been answered. But when I finally do, I sit there and I put the needle down and I'm like, Jesus, wow. I think my prayers have been answered. Like, it's not working. 17 shots. I put enough drugs in my body, more than Kurt Cobain probably had the day he died. And they said Kurt Cobain was filled with enough heroin that could kill a horse.
Oh my God.
So I had that much drugs in my system and I'm doing full needles of drugs that would have killed any other person. It's not working. And when I realized it, I jumped up and I banged on my door and I opened the door and I don't even have enough energy or the breath in me to stand up. I'm holding on this door frame. My little mom, bless her heart, runs up the stairs and says, Matt, what, are you okay? And I said, Mom, I'm ready. It's almost like she had been praying and the look on her face said she was ready. She was ready too. And she'd been waiting. And I could cry when I remember this so vividly that she knew. She said, you're ready? And I said, yeah, I'm ready. And she said, all right, you can't do drugs here in my house anymore, but let's get this process started. And we had to call rehabs and detoxes. And it's not as easy as you think getting into rehab. The help is there for everyone if you want it, but sometimes there are waiting lists. Right. I had to be put on a waiting list to get my insurance through my mom approved and get into this detox. And my mom was like, she dangled a carrot. I made the decision for myself. And I tell every addict who listens, you have to be ready by yourself. You cannot get sober for your kids, your mom, the job, the car, the wife, the home you lost. Most of the things we lose in addiction, they're not going to come back, even if you make amends. Most people in the world don't want to or even need to forgive our behavior. So I tell people this, you can't get sober for anybody. You have to want it. You have to hit that moment that I did in that disgusting, dark, filthy room that I had been sweating and bleeding in and looking at porn. Like that room, I'll never forget how disgusting. That room was hell. And I had been sitting in it for weeks, a month straight. And that moment is what you need. Nobody can get sober if they just, you know what? I think I'm going to do this for my girlfriend and I'm going to get my girlfriend back and I'm going to go to rehab. It doesn't work, bro. Good luck. You have to hit this place that I call rock bottom.
Rock bottom. Would you say that was the most rock bottom you'd ever hit in your entire life?
I pray to God there's nothing worse than that because I'm not trying to see it, And my mom put me on a waiting list and she dangled a carrot. I always loved tattoos and artwork. And the company that I'm affiliated with, Sullen Clothing, she showed up with a bag of Sullen Clothing, hats and t-shirts and a hoodie or something and some socks. And every Friday until I got to rehab, she'd bring me this bag and she would say, can you make it to next Friday?
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, I can do it, Mom. And, in this process while I'm waiting, I'm eating and I'm sleeping and I'm watching normal TV now. I'm not looking at porn. I'm watching movies. I'm eating and I'm sleeping and waiting. And a few weeks pass by and every Friday she brings me a bag. Make it to next Friday. Wow. Well, I got into rehab. I got into a detox in a rehab. She continued that process till I was 9 months sober. And when I was 9 months sober, she brought me my last bag and she says, look, go get that year. You're 3 months short of a year. Go get the year and then you can start bringing me stuff. And I did it. And I did it. And I got the year and then I went past that. And now I work for that company that she used to bring me their clothing.
That's amazing. What a story.
Yeah.
You must be so grateful to your mom. Are you really close to her?
I love my mom. My mom's my best friend.
Yeah.
She's my best friend. I love that lady more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like she's that one person that really stood by you through all the hardest of times.
When I was in prison for 19 years collectively, on and off through the state of California, no matter how far north or south I was, she would visit me every other Sunday. Wow. Every other Sunday. She would drive her old ass in this little car to see me and always send me books. I read over 6,617 books, everything from classic literature to war and history. I'm pretty sharp when it comes to world history and war history. And my mom made sure that I've read everything from the classics to everything to Anne Rice. I've read everything. And I saved all those books that she sent me. They're in my garage. Eventually one day I'm going to give them to my son.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's too far and few to hear a story like this where someone has actually turned their life around. They've hit some real dark places, seen prison life, been through that, gone through the PTSD and stuff. So, it's a real inspiration to have that.
Thank you. The PTSD is hard. I still go through it. There are nights I wake up and I'll leave me and my girlfriend at our apartment. I'll leave the room and go sit on the couch. There's stuff that I saw that I don't think is ever going to go away, and it affects my sleep sometimes, but it's getting better a little bit, but that PTSD will last. I don't have a lot of thoughts of using drugs or moments where I think I'm going to go relapse and get high. For me, I pretty much, I know how to play the tape backwards and forwards. So I know if I got high for one night, I know damn well what's going to happen. So I don't have those. I just have a lot of PTSD from the other life I lived. And it just is what it is.
Can you tell us a little bit about what was some of the things that you maybe saw in prison that caused this PTSD?
I'll share one quick thing because it's already on record. I don't like, as I told you, I don't like to tell too much about prison because I feel it's not right for some of the politics and the rules. And but one of the things I saw I remember watching a white kid who chose to run with a black gang, which wasn't socially acceptable in prison.
Right.
He got stabbed so many times that they stabbed him till his head came off and they kicked his head across the yard. And the guys who did it sat there and watched. And the guys who did it, they were stabbing him for so long that they sat down covered in blood, and they were sitting in a pool of blood that starts to thicken and harden. And there's a lot of blood that comes out of a human body when it dies and or something is removed from it. There was so much blood that came off this kid, out of this kid, that they were sitting in, it looked like hard jelly, like red jelly that had hardened. And they're sitting there covered in blood with these knives that were just brutal weapons that were made in prison. And they stabbed this kid so long that his head finally fell off and they kicked it across the yard. The cops in this particular prison, I know that prison guards are known for seeing a lot of bad things, but this was something so shocking. Even the prison guards were shocked, and they stood there. They didn't even react and stop it. It was a huge thing that happened. The female officer got fired and sued because she didn't shoot. She was supposed to have shot these inmates because, they have they have towers that are always watching us with females and males that are carrying shotguns, M1s, Mini 14s,
right.
And they're trained. The law says they're allowed to shoot us on sight if they see us attacking another inmate.
Right.
She didn't do her job, and these inmates killed the kid because of it.
Wow.
And this kid, everybody warned him. I know, like, I tell people a lot, like, I know that you like to watch social media and kids like to watch rap videos and or rock videos, and one guy thinks he's going to do this and go that way. Well, California prison system is extremely dangerous. So if you live in California, don't think you're going to be the white kid that runs with the blacks or vice versa. It doesn't work that way. It's not, I'm not trying to be racist, but I'm just giving you facts from what I've seen. There are violent consequences for some choices some kids make off listening to the wrong music. And this kid, unfortunately, didn't heed any of our warnings. And it was a pretty brutal end. And I mean, if I close my eyes, I can still see it. You can still, when I close my eyes right now, I can still smell the blood. The blood was so thick. That copper smell just never leaves. It was pretty horrific.
That was some vivid imagery. I think like I could almost feel it, the stress of that moment as well, like having to even see that or
the moment for me it's the hardest part is, this is the last thing I'll say. The moment while the kid is screaming, to that exact second when he stops screaming and his head falls, is like it's something you probably never would even see or think you could see. A horror movie can't reenact something like that. It's pretty bad. Well, imagine, and mind you, there's probably 200 or 300 grown men of all ethnicities and gangs laying on the floor watching this go down, and it was so quiet you could probably hear a mouse walk by. That's how quiet it was on an outside yard. People were watching this.
Do you think that it's these kind of things that cause this PTSD and that also affects recidivism rates?
I think sometimes, yeah, it could. It does affect. It does. Those things we go through affect our behavior when we come home because we're scared. We don't know how to act. We don't know how to integrate in society. Like I said, when I came home, I stayed in my bedroom like it was a jail cell. I turned it into a jail cell. I washed laundry in a sink. I kept shower shoes on. I used to program, have a cup of coffee by 6 a.m., drive my mom nuts because I would only drink instant Folgers. Like our routines become our habits. And I do think there are some men that they've done so long that it's hard for them to ingrain into real life. Then there are those of us who went through this and are so desperate to get back home and change. When I came home, I had to laser off all these hateful tattoos. That's all I'm going to say. They were hateful tattoos. I had to remove anything that had to do with that life. It all had to go. And I went through all the therapy, the training, the PTSD therapy, the intense trauma therapy. I lasered off tattoos. I've since covered over the area, but I've had tattoos that they don't belong in society. So there are those of us who want redemption, and there are those of us who either A, don't want it, which those are the people that I tell people are scary, because there are some people that need to be in prison. Like those kids who stabbed that kid. It doesn't matter that he chose a different group. Okay, it's wrong that he chose that, but what they did was brutal. Those kinds of people need to be in prison. And then there's those of us that catch so much PTSD that we can't get our brains back and get back into the world. Those people, I'm sure recidivism, they get affected by that. Yeah. But from what I understand, my friend just came home after doing 29 years, and they've started to release a bunch of lifers, heavy hitters, major mob guys and killers and shit. And they have a 0% recidivism rate right now. All of the major killers and lifers and gang members and mob guys that they've released have gone back into the world, done their therapy, and they're disappearing back into the folds of society because they just want to be free.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good things you can learn in prison if you shut your mouth and you avoid the violence. I mean, I made a lot of friendships that will last a lifetime. I've made you learn how to deal with others of different groups, gangs, races. You learn how to get along with people, whether you like them or not. And there's a lot of good things you learn. You learn how to work in a group, whether you like it or not, too.
And also, in a sense, it teaches you this community, right? The sense of community. Because I do feel like a lot of people that get into crime in their personal lives are quite isolated, or they feel like, they're not really like part of a community. They don't have that support structure. But going into prison, to an extent, you create a community as well within there. You protect each other. You learn all of that.
Yeah. But remember, though, a lot of these guys that go to prison, they're already part of street gangs. So most of them already have that community life. So for them, they're transitioning into a different level of community life.
Right.
But there are some people, the loners, that go to jail and they find what they've been looking for.
Yeah, that makes sense. What was like therapy and education and, the programs that were in place? Do you feel like those were really helpful as well in prison?
Are you talking about in prison? I got that when I came home. I'm going to be honest with you. The California Department of Corrections offers all this. I mean, from what I understand, they're doing it now. But when I was there, they weren't doing none of that. They encouraged violence. They liked us to fight each other. The more we're fighting each other and we're not getting along, the more they can keep black guys hating white guys and white guys hating black guys. The cops initiate that. They encourage that because it gives them access to overtime. Those cops are making millions of dollars in overtime because the more that we hate each other and fight each other in prison, the more of a job they have to do. If we were to ever get our shit together and just get along and act right, we'd all get out on time. We would all get home from prison and go back to society. Yeah. But the cops encourage us fighting each other.
The irony, right?
But you have to understand, in California, prison is big business. Big business.
Wow. How did people bring in contraband like drugs and stuff into prison? Was that
they smuggled it in through their parts on their body? That's yeah.
Interesting. So okay, let's talk about coming out of prison. Like, what was it like reintegrating back into society, jobs?
It was hard. Getting off drugs was the biggest fight, but it was also hard. Me getting used to like the norms and the rules. You have to realize that how you deal with something in prison, you can't deal with out here. Which is why I started to remove all these tattoos in the first place, because you realize when I was in prison, I wanted to push you away. I wanted to blame you for everything I did. I come home and I have to realize, wait a minute, I did that to myself. I was tweaked out. I got high. I chose to go act that crazy, destroy a whole double wide trailer. And then you start to realize a lot of the stuff, how we react to situations, that doesn't work out here. You can't punch the guy at the liquor store who disrespects you. I can't punch you if you bump into me accidentally at Walmart. These things are just part of life. Get used to it. Get used to people not being respectful to you, because in all honesty, nobody has to respect you. In prison, if you disrespect me, I'm on top of you like a spider monkey in about 4 seconds. In the real world, you're not acting like that, because in all honesty, the guy who's pulling up in his construction truck, who's got a crew of 5 guys, he doesn't have to respect you. He doesn't have to worry that was your car spot you were waiting. He don't owe you shit.
Right. Yeah.
The world doesn't owe us shit. It's up to us to get our shit and move on.
Yeah. Did that take you some time to like understand that? Was that therapy that helped you? Yeah,
it did. Yeah, it did. Therapy helped. But one of the biggest things I had a problem with was the selection. I remember coming out of jail, out of prison, and I went to AMPM, and I'll never forget wanting to go get a Coke or a Dr. Pepper. And there was about 17 different flavors of each one. And I was just blown the fuck away. Like, are you kidding me? And then amplify that by the beer, the Coke, the water. There's 20. I mean, and then the energy drinks, and I'm like, I hadn't had an energy drink. I drank an energy drink. It was like smoking crack. It was all of this shit was like the selection, the choices, the variety. Because in prison, we're limited to one piece of paper for the market, front and back, and we have a catalog to order our shoes and our cosmetics from. When I went to CVS or Vaughn's with my mom, and she goes, "What deodorant do you want?" And I looked down, there was like 36 different brands, and then styles of each brand of deodorant. Everything from volcano smell to octopus flavor. I'm like, Jesus, I was so overwhelmed. It scared me for like 2 weeks straight.
And what about in terms of like getting jobs and like, an apartment? And
I didn't really get a job for a while. It took me a while to get a job. I messed around in getting high on and off for so long that when I finally got a job, I was sober and I started working in recovery.
Right.
Before I started working for Sullen, I started working in recovery.
Right.
Managing a sober living house, managing another sober living house, working as an overnight technician at a rehab center in Chatsworth.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Is that support given by the prison in the sense that once you're out on parole, they offer you or they give you some options and stuff?
No, you have to actually ask for it. I mean, I will say this for parole. I had a pretty cool parole officer. If I want help, whether it be anything from treatment, as long as I'm honest with him, tell him I'm using and I need help before he catches me, he'll help me. Won't send me to jail. If I ask for help finding a job, if he knows you're serious, they'll plug you into a job. They will.
Oh,
But
awesome.
but most of the guys, they're just playing the system and they're either waiting to go back to jail or they're trying to find an angle to get over on them. So parole, I hate to say this, but most of those cops are not stupid. They're very aware of us and our behavior. So they know what to look for.
Right. Exactly.
When I was on parole, I wasn't ready for a job yet.
Right. Yeah. Because you mentioned it was after that you started
It was after I got sober that I finally realized I didn't have time. I only had time for drugs. How I got off parole is still amazing to me. I don't even know. I think they finally kicked me off eventually. Like, hey, it's been 3 or 4 years. You got to get off parole now. They just sent me the card, discharged me.
Wow. And at that point, you were still on drugs.
Yeah, I was on and off, or I was hiding drugs. I was learning how to fake the drug test by putting bleach on my finger. It was amazing. Yeah.
Wait, tell us about this. I've never heard of this before.
I don't want to say something that's going to teach people how to do it. I don't think I should say that. Yeah, I shouldn't have said that.
Okay. No. We'll leave it at that then.
No.
Interesting though, huh? And yeah, now you're working like in this job full time. Like, how's that?
It's cool. Social media is a monster. I work for my company selling clothing. I love it. I run social media accounts, a few of them. I'm a model. I do videos, extra work in the movies now. I've been doing these speaking tours of podcasts and events where I go speak.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good. I'm basically never off the clock. My girlfriend can't stand it because I'm always working. My iPhone is my office for the most part. So like my work always calls me. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no.
But for me, it's good. It keeps me busy. I'm on my toes. I'm working. I'm moving.
Yeah.
I'm making connections. I'm like the master communicator. I keep a group of about 100 people together and interacting all throughout the week at one time.
Right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you're keeping yourself busy doing things that, you're making a change, you're making a difference. So that must be so rewarding.
By the time I sit down at the end of the night, I'm falling asleep. Yeah. I stay moving till the end of the night. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back though on your life, like now, do you have any regrets? Do you feel like you regret all of this stuff I like to say I regret joining a gang, but then I feel like all this stuff, if I were able to change any of that, I couldn't be doing this with you right now. If I were to just have gone to school or stayed in the military and continue to be a fireman, I wouldn't be able to touch half the people I touch. It's a good job and it would be a great career, yes. But the way I touch people now is something that even a fireman can't do. Right.
I've been helping people from here to London, England, Great Britain. I sponsor guys all over if you're willing to take my advice. And I've been helping guys around the world that just reach out and talk to me about staying sober. And I'm finding if you're doing meth in Scotland, you're the same as a meth addict right here in LA. Right. If you're doing crack in Japan, you're the same as me as I was in LA. We're all the same. Yeah. And if I can help more people because of my history, that like I can probably help more people than cops can because of my history. People are more inclined to want to talk to me and sit down with me than they would an officer. Right.
Because you're a credible source in the sense that you've gone through it on a personal level, right?
Well, and I think a common problem in society is the law enforcement, especially in LA, they've done so much damage that people don't respect them. They're scared of them. There's a huge difference in you assuming that we respect you. Respect is something that is serious. People don't respect the cops. They're scared of them because at any moment they could ruin their life.
No, that's true. What do you think on a larger scale we need to do as a society to eradicate this drug problem?
Well, I'll say two things, but this is it's dangerous. And I say this to everybody because number one, they don't really want to stop drugs. My country is the strongest country and probably has the strongest military in the history of the world. If at any moment we wanted to stop drugs, we could very easily shut that down. They don't want to because it's big business. It's big business for pharmacies, for addiction medications, for rehabs, for all types of programs. It makes money for our country. Now, that being said, for the rest of us who are in my level, the only way you can help an addict is to not help them. My mom she let me sit in that room until I was ready. You have to stop giving. Like I was telling someone the other day that there's all these groups that think it's cool to show up at these homeless places and give them needles that are clean and give them water and clothing. That's not helping an addict. The only help for an addict like me is no help. You have to let a drug addict hit rock bottom.
Right.
You have to not give them food, not give them any assistance. They need to realize that when you're doing this, it's not acceptable and we're not going to tolerate it. You don't hate them, but you have to let them know, listen, when you're ready, I'll be here. But until you're ready, I can't even give you $1. Because when you're doing drugs like I was, every single thing you give me goes 2 or 4 drugs. I will manipulate the shit out of you for a bottle of water that I'll use the water to inject my drugs with. There's never just a simple thing with drug addicts. Everything we do is a manipulation tactic.
Right.
So the only solution to helping drug addiction is no help until they're ready to get to treatment.
That's really good advice because, I think a lot of people, they fall in this trap like, this is my family member or this is my loved one. Like I can't let this person be on the streets, at least give them a place to stay.
But, we forget that they're there because they want to be there. If they wanted to be at home with us, ingrained in the family, you wouldn't be injecting meth or heroin in the bathroom while the kids are eating dinner. Right. That's not normal. So drug addicts choose to go there. Like the people in LA, we're having this abundance, a huge influx of the homeless culture that it's actively living in tents everywhere doing drugs. People are showing up in groups to give them new needles and clothing and food and water. And it's like these addicts are not getting the point. You're not like you're making it longer before they reach rock bottom.
Right.
You have to it's like, what do you do when a kid's bad or your dog is bad? You turn your back on them and you ignore them. You have to put them on timeout.
Right.
You put an addict on timeout until they're ready to say, hey, I'm ready, like I was. When I knocked on that door and said, Mom, I'm ready, get me out of here. My first thing was, I'll do anything you want. I don't care what. You want me to sweep out the garage every day, 6 times a day? Sign me up. You want me to clean your toilet? Cool. Where's the brush?
Right.
You have to be at that place. If you're not at that place, all that assistance, you're just prolonging it.
Right. Now, when you were going through your withdrawals coming out of it, how did you manage to convince yourself to like not take another hit?
Well, for me, I was so spiritually, mentally, and physically broken that I didn't give 2 shits what I had to go through as long as I didn't go back where I was. That's my truth. My truth was I was in such a dark place that I knew that I never wanted to feel like that again. And if I had to go through this for a couple weeks, then let's get through this the fastest we can. Right. And I didn't do it with no medication. I didn't take any of the stuff that they're selling you because now people are hooked on all these drugs, these Suboxone, these Subutex, these the methadone. You got people hooked on these 20 years after they've gotten off the heroin, and they're not even realizing that they're not sober still. They're just on another narcotic.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't do none of that. I cold turkeyed it. I'm not saying everybody can do that, but I'm just saying that's my truth. I knew that I didn't want to feel like that or be right there ever again. I don't care if mind you, I've had a divorce. I have a son who's 23 who won't talk to me. There's nothing life is going to throw at me that makes me use drugs again.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really strong, willpower. And I think it's also like being able to, the further of a distance you have from that, the more you see it clearly, right? In a sense, it's like, it's hindsight and I'm going to leave it there. Yeah. So my final question for you to end this interview is, what were some things that you took away from your life experiences that you would like to impart to our listeners today?
One of the things I want to say, I think back to that choice I had when I just wanted to stay a tagger. I knew that I didn't want to join a gang. And I knew it was not the right choice for me. And I did it out of peer pressure. I did it because I didn't want to be a pussy or a bitch. And I remember my heart wasn't into it. And I said this to someone else when I did the soft white underbelly. I told Mark, I said, I would tell people to follow their heart because sometimes your brain will lead you wrong. As a man, your dick will always lead you wrong most of the time, but sometimes your heart won't lead you wrong. My heart was screaming, hold your ground, stick with graffiti. My life could have been different if I stuck with graffiti. So I would love to tell anybody, just follow your heart. Sometimes, your heart's not always right either, but for the most part, for me, it's been right.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think that's that sort of part that regulates it, just kind of like calibrates your sort of like understanding of things. Like, yeah, that's awesome. Wow, Matt, that's a really interesting story. Thank you so much for being here today, sharing that, being vulnerable, getting deep, going back into like some of the hardest part of your journey. And, I really do think our listeners have a lot to take away as well from this. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
If you enjoyed the episode and would like to help support the show, please follow and subscribe. You can rate and review your feedback on any of our platforms listed in the description. I'd like to recognize our guests who are vulnerable and open to share their life experiences with us. Thank you for showing us we're human. Also, a thank you to our team who worked so hard behind the scenes to make it happen.
Joe Mills,
Chris Trzynski,
Stefan Menzel.
The show would be nothing without you. I'm Jenica, host and writer of the show, and you're listening to Multispective.